The chalk hadn't even touched the board when the professor's voice sliced through the lecture hall. "You in the back. Since you're so eager to join, solve this." The room turned. Dozens of students craned their necks toward the rear corner, where a soft-spoken figure had just slipped into his seat. His name was Leo Bennett, 21 years old, a transfer student. Unremarkable on the surface, except for the way he was quietly rewriting the limits of human calculation. The lecture hall was everything you'd expect from an elite university's math department. Polished oak seats, high ceilings, a wall of chalkboards filled with looping symbols and impossibly long proofs. Leo sat among them like a ghost. No laptop. Just a well-worn notebook and a pencil sharpened with surgical precision. He didn't look like someone ready to challenge the department's most feared professor. He looked like someone hoping not to be noticed. But Dr. Malcolm Thorne had built his reputation on noticing weakness, noticing hesitation, and using it for sport. Dr. Thorne was a name students said with both admiration and dread. He was a brilliant mind, with an ego to match. He didn't teach to inspire. He taught to remind you how much smarter he was. And today, Leo was his target. The professor tapped his chalk against the board with smug rhythm, scrawling a problem that hadn't been solved in under 10 minutes by anyone in the department. "Go on," Thorne said with a smirk. "We'll wait." The class laughed. Someone whispered, "This should be good." But Leo didn't even stand up. He just sat there, staring at the board, pencil unmoving, lips pressed in a straight line. 30 silent seconds passed, then another. What no one saw, what no one could see, was that Leo wasn't confused. He was memorizing every symbol, mapping it, rotating it, breaking it apart in his head. He'd been solving problems like this since he was 14. Not for grades, not for applause, but because numbers were the only language that ever made sense. He didn't speak up, didn't correct the professor, didn't even blink. And as Dr. Thorne scoffed and turned back to his lecture, Leo flipped open his notebook and wrote 3 small symbols at the top of the page. A quiet beginning to something no one in that room saw coming, not even the man who had just tried to humiliate him, and definitely not the professor who would soon discover that the shy kid in the back row was about to solve the unsolvable. It was tradition, really. Dr. Malcolm Thorne's tradition. Every semester he chose one student to make an example of. One poor soul to belittle, outwit, and reduce to silence. For Thorne, it wasn't just about teaching mathematics. It was about dominating the room, reminding everyone exactly who held the chalk and who sat beneath it. This time, his target was Leo Bennett, the quiet transfer student, the one who didn't laugh at Thorne's sarcasm, who didn't raise his hand or pretend to be impressed, who sat with that notebook, silent, strange, and unreadable. Thorne doubled down. Each lecture, he launched increasingly difficult questions Leo's way. "Since you're back there scribbling again, Mr. Bennett, perhaps you'd like to walk us through this function's discontinuity?" Laughter, every time. The kind that stings. Leo never rose to it, never lashed back. He'd just blink once, jot something down, and remain still. It wasn't shyness, it was precision. He wasn't just understanding the problems, he was dissecting them. Still, Thorne pushed harder. He called Leo's math creative fiction, mocked his silence, even suggested he'd transferred in because other schools didn't know what to do with him. Most students would have cracked, but Leo? He watched, he waited, he calculated. Jasmine Park, a top student herself, had started off skeptical of Leo. He didn't talk, he didn't share notes, but during one study session, she glanced over at his open notebook. Every proof from class, simplified, improved, solutions rewritten with techniques she hadn't seen even in graduate texts. That's when she knew Leo wasn't quiet because he was lost. He was quiet because he was 10 steps ahead. Word started to spread, whispers through the department halls. Who was this guy? By mid-semester, Dr. Thorne prepared his final blow, a custom equation, one that hadn't appeared in any textbook. He even mentioned it before class with a grin. "Let's see if the back row philosopher can keep up today." Leo looked up once, said nothing, and then, as the board filled with complex symbols and impossible steps, he blinked, then smiled, just barely. He recognized it, all of it. And that was the moment everything began to shift. Dr. Thorne had written it in bold strokes. a monstrous equation sprawling across the board, dense with variables, subscripts, and integrals. A custom construct pulled from obscure research and altered just enough to appear unsolvable. This, he declared smugly, has stumped doctoral candidates. He turned toward the back row. Mr. Bennett, do you care to try? Or would you prefer to sit this one out? Silence. All eyes swiveled to Leo. He stood slowly, quietly, not with arrogance, not with defiance, just purpose. He stepped forward, past the student still smirking, past the professor who expected a collapse. Leo took the chalk. No preamble, no excuses. He erased the last 3 lines of Thorne's solution, efficiently, without hesitation, one stroke. Then another. And then, like a sculptor revealing a figure beneath the marble, he began to write. The chalk tapped rapidly. A limit reformulated. A substitution reversed. A hidden symmetry exposed. The room shifted. Jasmine leaned forward. Her eyes widened. Even the usual cynics stopped whispering. Line by line. Leo redrew the equation's framework, stripping away unnecessary complexity, revealing its hidden elegance. Halfway through, Dr. Thorne's arms dropped to his sides. Leo was right. He'd spotted the professor's deliberate misdirection. He hadn't just solved the problem. He'd understood it deeper than the man who wrote it, and when the final line was drawn, when the chalk paused just above the equals sign, the room was still. Leo turned, placed the chalk down gently, and said, "This equation isn't wrong. It's just inefficient. No applause yet, just stunned faces. Even Dr. Thorne didn't move." Then finally, a student in the front row whispered, "Did he just refactor a graduate-level proof in under 5 minutes?" Jasmine stood up and started clapping. Then the room followed, and for the first time all semester, Leo smiled. The chalk dust hadn't even settled when Dr. Thorne stepped forward. He scanned the board like he didn't trust his own eyes. No errors, no shortcuts, just elegance. It took him a moment to speak, and when he did, the usual arrogance in his voice was missing. "Where did you learn this approach?" he asked stiffly. Leo shrugged. "I read a paper last year that hinted at a similar structure, but it didn't resolve the integral cascade. I've been working on a cleaner path ever since." The professor blinked. "You read research journals?" "I annotate them," Leo replied simply. No bravado, no apology, just fact. For the first time, the lecture hall was seeing Leo, really seeing him. Not the quiet kid in the back, not the transfer nobody, but the mind behind the silence. Jasmine looked over at him, her skepticism gone, replaced with awe. And something else, respect. After class, students who'd never glanced his way approached, not to mock, to ask. "Can you show me how you simplified that vector term? What else have you worked on?" And Thorne, he didn't admit defeat, not openly, but the next lecture began differently. He gestured toward Leo's seat. "Mr. Bennett, I believe you'll find today's topic, iterative convergence, a familiar friend. Feel free to jump in. An invitation, not a challenge." From that day on, Leo wasn't the invisible kid anymore. He was the quiet storm the department hadn't seen coming. And in academic halls where reputation is everything, he earned his with a single equation. Weeks passed, and Leo Bennett's name became whispered in new ways across the math department. Not as a punchline, but as a benchmark. "Did you see what Bennett did with that nonlinear system?" Dr. Thorne cited his comment in today's lecture. First time he's done that for a student. Something had changed. The boy who once sat unnoticed in the back row was now surrounded after every class. Not for attention, but for insight. Even Jasmine, who'd once raised an eyebrow at his awkward silence, now saved him a seat and passed him research articles during lecture. Dr. Thorne, meanwhile, kept his distance, until one afternoon he approached Leo with a thin folder in hand. "I've been asked to nominate someone for the Advanced Research Fellowship. It's rare for undergrads. Almost unheard of for transfers." He paused, cleared his throat. "But after reviewing your proofs, I'd be doing the field a disservice not to put your name forward." Leo blinked, surprised. "Thank you, sir." Thorne hesitated. "I misjudged you. You're not just smart. You see patterns most don't even think to look for. It wasn't a full apology, but from Thorne, it was enough. Later that evening, Leo walked across the quad, the breeze tugging at his hoodie. He passed by a bulletin board, half covered in event flyers and announcements. One flyer caught his eye. Student Symposium, Emerging Thinkers in Mathematics. Submissions due next week. He paused, then took out a pen and wrote, Bennett L. Topic, Abstract Efficiency in Multivariable Systems. The same lecture. All that had once smirked when he walked in would soon rise to their feet when he took the stage. Have you ever been underestimated because you were quiet? Because you didn't speak the way others did? Didn't take up space the way the world expected? Leo Bennett's story is a reminder that brilliance doesn't always shout. Sometimes it listens, it watches, and when the moment is right, it answers with something undeniable. Remember, true intelligence doesn't need permission to exist, it doesn't need applause to matter, and it definitely doesn't need to look like anyone else's idea of genius. If you've ever felt overlooked, unseen, or out of place, know this. The people who laugh now may one day cite your work. The world eventually catches up to quiet excellence. Share this story with someone who needs that reminder today. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever surprised someone who doubted you? And where are you watching from? Because your story, just like Leo's, might be the one that changes everything.